Let's move on to other big story. This may be one of the biggest revelations related to the Sindhuratna accident so far. A senior naval officer who was among the last to speak, Lieutenant Manoranjan Kumar, has made an extraordinary claim. Just days before Lieutenant Kumar set sail for one final time, two officers shared a conversation. The senior officer now tells us that Lieutenant Kumar was worried about the risks he and his crew were taking by sailing with the expired batteries, the very same ones that caused last week's fire. We are protecting this officer's identity, but what he reveals is very, very damning indeed, and I hope that A.K. Antony, our defense minister, is watching this, because if this officer knew that there was a danger involved, if that had been communicated to the naval headquarters, and if naval headquarters had communicated this to the Ministry of Defense, then Mr. Antony, you have blood in your hands.
Disaster struck in the battery compartment of INS Sindhuratna. Barely moments later, 25-year-old Lieutenant Manoranjan Kumar had suffocated to death, sealed into a compartment by the submarine's emergency fire suppression system. But Headlines Today now has explosive proof that the officer knew about the ticking bomb he was sailing in. Four days before his death, Lieutenant Manoranjan Kumar had dinner at the naval officers' mess in Mumbai. In an explosive twist to the tragedy, a serving naval officer who dined with Lieutenant Manoranjan that night has told Headlines Today that the young officer virtually predicted his doom.
Initially, when I spoke to him, this guy was, he said, I am disembarked from the submarine and I am going on leave shortly. So when I heard about the incident, I narrated this incident to some of the friends. Look, I met this officer who warned me that we are sitting on a bomb, and that's how we are sailing. So I said, there are some people, who's already predicted. But later on I came to know, after 2-3 days, I just happened to see a message that it was Lieutenant Manoranjan. It was terribly shocked to me. Frankly speaking, I was shocked in the sense that why did I have wished him good luck? And I was shocked to have this conversation with him, and I wish that if I could go back in time and just not wish him good luck.
The shock of realization was made worse when Lieutenant Manoranjan Sr. remembered the precise, helpless warning the young officer had made about the Sindhuratna's decrepit state.
I asked him that after Sindhuratna, has things changed? Has the safety increased? So he happened to tell me, sir, the batteries that we have, they take 10 times longer to charge. And if they take 10 times longer, naturally the hydrogen H2S that is developed is also 10 times. Whereas the hydrogen burners which are there, they are designed to burn up to say max 2 times hydrogen. These 7 times, which is highly inflammable gases, lead to a lot of incidents. In fact, he told me that there are so many incidents that go unreported.
The officer says he has been shattered ever since he heard the news that during one of his last meals on land, Lieutenant Manoranjan had virtually known what was coming.
I didn't sleep for 2 days. I literally, had tears in my eyes. I had this conversation. This guy knew that there's an issue there. Still he went there. He laid his life for the country. So, with that kind of turmoil. Plus, I had the burden of having this conversation with him, wherein he described, sir, we are just, anything can happen anytime.
While protecting the identity of the officer who has chosen to speak out, his words are a shattering indication of sentiments within the Navy over just who should be held responsible.
Some kind of accountability from the people, so-called integrated headquarters, wherein those guys are equally responsible. Ministry of Defense has become integrated headquarters. But unfortunately, they don't share that kind of responsibility if things go wrong. So I think it is a collective responsibility of the people, right from the electrical officer who should have said that, look, this is what a it is, you can't say. To the minister or integrated headquarters, which is responsible for supplying these batteries, I think everybody down the chain is responsible.
We're protecting the identity of this serving naval officer who's chosen to speak out to Headlines Today in a confidential email that he's actually sent to his seniors, and which Headlines Today now has an exclusive copy of. He has said that there should be collective responsibility for the death of Lieutenant Manoranjan Kumar on INS Sindhuratna. He says in the email that the officer told him that he was sailing on a bomb. Officers were sailing on bombs as far as the submarine arm was concerned, and that the entire higher military leadership was fully aware of the problems that afflicted the submarine service of the Indian Navy. Further, he said that battery pit fires was simply the order of the day, and that everyone needs to take collective responsibility for Lieutenant Manoranjan's death. The question now really is of accountability, of who truly must take the blame for sending young officers like Lieutenant Manoranjan out to sea, knowing full well it could be their last. In New Delhi, Shiv Arur for Headlines Today.
This is simply pathetic. This is no way to be treating our brave sailors. Joining me now, Headlines Today's editor for Strategic Affairs, Gaurav Sawant, and our deputy editor for Defence, Shiv Arur. I want to go across first to Shiv first. Did Lieutenant Manoranjan inform his seniors in the Navy, and more importantly, did A.K. Antony know that these sailors were on a ship, on a submarine, which had expired batteries?
Rahul, good question. The fact is, Lieutenant Manoranjan and Lieutenant Commander Kapish Mowal had both spoken liberally and many times about the problems they'd faced on submarines to their immediate seniors as well as to others. Now, going into the specifics of what happened, that will be coming out in the Board of Inquiry. But one of the specific things that this particular serving officer has told us about that conversation is the Lieutenant Manoranjan said very wistfully, he said everybody knows about the fact that these are ticking time bombs. It is raised at every commander's conference twice every single year. The defense minister knows about it, all the command chiefs know about it, all the fleet commanders know about it, everybody from top to bottom, including the people in charge of safety in the Navy, know about it. Definitely the MOD bureaucracy knows about it, because the minutes of all discussions that happen at annual commanders conferences go to the
So what did A.K. Antony do, Gaurav, about this? If you know that you've got sailors sailing on submarines with expired batteries, as the defense minister, as the man responsible for protecting India, he has a responsibility. Did the man do anything at all, or just sat back in his sainthood?
Unfortunately, he just sat back, because there is documentary evidence to suggest that the chief of the naval staff raised the issue of batteries, and not 1 month, 2 months, 3 months before this tragedy, 18 months before this incident.
With Antony?
What
did Antony do?
With Defense Secretary R.K. Mathur. This was repeatedly raised.
What did they do?
Nothing. There was a complaint which had been made. These batteries have a life cycle, 200 charges, 200 discharges. Before their life cycle expires, Navy moved a proposal for replacement, and not for one set of 240 batteries, but for 4 sets. The Ministry of Defence kept arguing on the issue of whether to buy from company A or to buy from company B. The files kept going back and forth. The batteries were not purchased. In 2 cases, the Navy sought an extension to use what the Navy calls shelf life expired batteries, so that some time period, at least the submarines would sail. The bigger disaster waiting to happen is, of the 9 kilo class submarines that the Indian Navy has, 7, according to the Indian Navy's own assessment, are not fit to sail, yet they are sailing.
7 are not fit to sail.
No,
they also have expired batteries.
Either expired batteries or other expired
So what's Antony
components.
saying after all these revelations? Because if this is, in fact, it's not a revelation, because he knew it.
Yes.
He knew it all
Remember,
along. He
Rahul,
did nothing about it.
The 2010 report that we reported just 2 days ago has completely embarrassed and changed the equation between the MOD and the Navy right now. This was a secret report. It was not supposed to be out. We got our hands on it, and that's why the Ministry of Defence has completely panicked now, because that report which we flashed on Thursday and Friday proves that the Ministry of Defence didn't just have an ambiguous, vague sense of how bad the problem was. It was a 24-page report which went into very sensitive details about just how bad things were in the submarine.
Just stay with me. Moments after Headlines Today aired the report that Shiv Arur just spoke about, pressure started building on the defence minister. The clamour is now growing for A.K. Antony, who thinks, or several close to him call him Saint Antony. Well, it's time that the saint, and this is something saints are known to do, take moral responsibility and step down.
मेरे घर का सहारा छीना गया सरकार अब क्या करेगा मेरे को देगा बेटा वापस.
Her questions to the officers who brought her 26-year-old son's body home are met with silence. Silence that echoes all the way from Jamshedpur to the national capital.
गवर्नमेंट की नेग्लिजेंसी है जो उस पर देखा नहीं गया. डिफेंस मंत्रालय की वो है, हादसा हो गया, उन्होंने वर्ड में अपना इस्तीफा 2 लाइन लिख के दे दिया. डिफेंस मिनिस्टर को भी तो करना चाहिए ना इसको.
Preliminary inquiries by the Board of Inquiry into the INS Sindhuratna accident have found that it may not have been the batteries that were responsible for the fire, but cables leading out from the battery pit area in a compartment right below where the sailors actually stayed on the submarine. However, as a precautionary measure and given that these are still preliminary investigations into the tragedy, the batteries on board INS Sindhuratna have all been removed and replaced with batteries from a sister submarine, INS Sindhukesri, at this time.
Experts who've been part of the Navy agree that accountability must be fixed at the top.
Who's going to investigate the circumstances that led the Navy chief to hand in his resignation? I mean, he didn't hand in his resignation only because of the Sindhuratna. Certainly the Sindhuratna would have forced his hand, the loss of those 2 lives. But his cry was a cry of despair that he's unable to maintain the Navy to the standards to which he expects of his juniors.
Whose job is this? The Navy chief has resigned, that's fine. He has owned up moral responsibility. But what about the responsibility of the Ministry of Defence?
Moments after headlines today aired the report, the pressure started building on the Defence Minister, explaining perhaps Mr. Anthony's reticence today.
अगर मैं सरकार से मांगूं कि मेरे को कुछ चाहिए तो मेरा बेटा चाहिए, क्या देगा बदले में बताइए, आप देंगे?
A soldier's son who became an officer died a martyr, a victim not of a foreign enemy but the enemy within. With Shivarur in New Delhi, Pierre Fitter, headlines today.
I don't want your money, who's going to get my son back? And has there been any response at all, Gaurav, from A.K. Antony himself? Is there any sense of taking moral responsibility? Taking the precedent that's been set by Admiral Joshi, is there any sense of moral culpability?
None whatsoever. We've been trying to question him. We've been trying to get an answer from him. He's been running away from television cameras. He's refusing to take answers. It was in deep despair that Admiral D.K. Joshi put in his papers because he took moral responsibility. He couldn't save the lives of these 2 officers. He knew the submarine.
No, but he doesn't sanction the finances. It's Antony and the Defence Secretary who do. And if there's someone at fault over here, it's not our naval chief, it's our Defence Minister.
And that's precisely why the bureaucracy and the Ministry of Defence structure at this time is trying to completely insulate and isolate A.K. Antony as far as
No, how can they? There's no legitimate justification for insulating Antony. It's simply not possible.
You do know that A.K. Antony is usually a minister who's approachable. If someone goes to him for a reaction, he's usually pretty friendly, about it. Today, when we went to him specifically for a reaction, saying that the parents of Lieutenant Manoranjan have a question to ask of you, will you answer it? He just got into his car and sped off.
In fact, Gaurav and Shiv are breaking a deeply distressing story in about 15 minutes from now when we come back with India Reports. Why don't you just give our viewers a sneak peek of how the problems could be exacerbated by the fact that the annual maintenance contracts for some of these ships have actually been cancelled.
For the aircraft of the Indian Air Force, A.K. Antony, now as he's described as Saint Antony by some people, what he's done is there was an allegation of corruption where Rolls-Royce was involved. He's put in abeyance all maintenance contracts of Indian Air Force.
Dangerous.
That's very dangerous.
That's dangerous because the Air Force has just reacted and said it may not have an immediate repercussion, but if the CBI probe drags on...
Not just that, what if these MiGs and Sukhoi start falling from
Rahul,
the sky?
if the CBI...
where do the Rolls-Royce engines go?
If the CBI probe drags on...
From your AJT to your Jaguars to your C-130 Hercules to your Kirans to your Avros,
all of
kind
them
of aircraft
have Rolls-Royce engines.
And the C-130J Super Hercules, the Sea Harriers in the Navy as well as the Sea King helicopters.
This is very, very dangerous, and I'm afraid You can't just say that the admiral has resigned and that's where St. Anthony's responsibility ends. And if you take your sainthood seriously, at least politically, ahead of the elections, show some remorse. Step down, take moral responsibility, because not doing so, Mr. Anthony, just shows how thick-skinned our babus and ministers are when it comes to the lives of our brave soldiers, our brave sailors, who know that they're sailing literally on a landmine and a bomb and yet do so for their country. And if their country responds in this cavalier fashion, it simply does them no justice. Mr. Anthony, think about this tonight. We're ending Centre Stage this evening.